Hi, my name is Kenneth, and I'll be answering the first creative critical reflection. How does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? First, we'll talk about how the film uses conventions. The film primarily utilizes conventions of the thriller genre, specifically focusing on the psychological and detective subgenres. Thrillers typically aim to create suspense, tension, and uncertainty for the audience. The film does this by placing the viewer directly inside the mental state of the protagonist. Instead of presenting a clear and straightforward narrative, the film intentionally made the story confusing and mysterious. This forces the audience to question what is real, what is imagined, and what might happen next. By doing this, the film follows many common thriller conventions, but it also slightly challenges them to create a more psychological and unsettling experience for the viewer. First, let's start off with the idea of the unreliable narrator. The film uses a confused and scared protagonist in order to make the story more difficult to fully understand. In many psychological thrillers, the audience cannot completely trust the main character's perspective, and that is something we intentionally tried to include in our film opener. The protagonist wakes up in a panic and appears disoriented, which immediately tells the audience that something is wrong. His emotional reactions and lack of understanding about his situation makes the viewer question what is really happening. By presenting the story through this confused perspective, the audience is forced to interpret the event themselves. I want the audience to not fully understand what is going on in our film, and instead form their own ideas or theories about what might be happening to the main character. Some viewers may believe the events are dreams, while others may think that they are memories or even something supernatural. This is important because psychological thrillers often rely on uncertainty to keep the audience engaged and curious about the story. Next, we have the use of technique, specifically point of view shots. Point of view shots are used throughout the opener so that the audience experiences events directly from the character's perspective. This technique helps the viewer feel the character's paranoia, confusion, and fear more intensely. Instead of watching the character from a distance, the audience is placed directly inside his experience. Because of this, the audience begins to form a connection with the main character, and they see what he sees and they feel the tension in the same way he does. For example, when the character looks around nervously, the camera movement reflects his uncertainty. These shots allow the audience to feel the nervousness and anxiety of the main character within the scenes. This technique is commonly used in thriller films because it helps build suspense and keeps the audience emotionally invested in what is happening. Another important convention we use in our film is symbolism. One of the main symbolic events in the film is the tally marks on the protagonist's palm. These marks are meant to represent the idea that the character has gone through this situation many times before. Each tally mark symbolizes another time he has experienced this strange cycle or dream. The tally mark suggests that the protagonist is trapped in a repeating loop, even though he has experienced these events multiple times. His mind is fractured and unable to remember the previous cycles clearly. Because of this fractured memory, every time he goes through the dream, it feels new and confusing to him. However, the marks on his hand act as physical evidence that this has happened before. This symbolism adds another layer of mystery to the story. It raises many questions for the audience, such as how long the character has been trapped in this cycle and whether he will be able to escape it. Psychological thrillers often use symbolic objects like this to hint at deeper meanings within the story without directly explaining them. Next, we have the picnic scene within our film. This scene begins in a calm and comfortable way with a warm orange tone lighting. The lighting helps create a peaceful and dreamlike atmosphere, making the moment feel safe and pleasant at first. The warm colors also suggest happiness or romance, which can make the audience feel relaxed. However, this calm feeling quickly changes when the cake is revealed and actually to be the main character's own heart. This sudden transformation introduces a horror element into the scene. The shift from the cake to the heart is intentionally disturbing and surreal. It creates a strong contrast between the peaceful setting and shocking reveal. This moment is meant to leave the audience feeling confused, unsettled, and curious about what the scene truly represents. It also reinforces the idea that the protagonist's reality is unstable and unpredictable. Moments like this are often used in psychological thrillers to surprise the audience and break their expectations. Lastly, we use camera angles to help communicate power dynamics between the characters. For example, the POV shot looking down at the heart is used to make the heart appear smaller, worthless, and inferior. This visual choice symbolizes the woman's control and dominance over the main character. Within the dream sequence, the woman appears to have power over both the main character and the environment around them. She seems calm and confident, while the protagonist appears vulnerable and powerless. This contrast emphasizes that she is controlling everything within the dream, including what happens to him. The next question is, how does it represent social groups or issues? One way our film challenges typical media conventions is by subverting male tropes. In many films, the male protagonist is portrayed as strong, independent, and emotionally controlled. However, in our film, the male lead is shown as weak, emotional, and psychologically vulnerable. At the beginning of the first scene, the character shows visible anger and frustration. However, by the end of the opener, his emotions shift from anger to fear and weakness. This emotional change highlights how powerless he is within the situation he is experiencing. Finally, we use contrast in the representation of both characters in the film. Both of the male and female characters are portrayed differently than what traditional cases might suggest. According to the Princess case study, women are often portrayed as more emotional and passive, usually waiting to be saved by the male character. At the same time, men are usually represented as physically stronger, more independent, and less emotional. However, our film challenges these expectations. Within the dream sequence, the woman is portrayed as the more dominant character. She appears calm and in control, while the male protagonist is confused and powerless. She controls the environment around them and seems to manipulate events of the dream. By reversing these traditional roles, the film creates a more unsettling and unexpected dynamic between the characters. This contrast also makes the plot twist and overall mystery feel more disturbing and memorable for the audience. Overall, the film uses a combination of thriller conventions such as an unreliable narrator, POV cinematography, symbolism, unsettling imagery, and unusual character representation in order to create a psychological and mysterious atmosphere. These techniques are designed to keep the audience questioning what is real while also making them emotionally connected to the main character's experience.